another edition of Speed Chronicles. We do it every Wednesday on the RevTV YouTube channel. And if you want to provide some feedback, offer up a question or two, at Todd Lewis Sports, at RevTV on the social channels, whether that be the X or the Instagram. It's something that we started some months ago. We look at racing stories, kind of touch on results, look ahead to what's coming up. And we're nearing the end of summer season for a lot of tracks across Canada, but there's still plenty of racing action, lots of good racing stories that we'll get into, as well as, again, it's not super results oriented, but more other stories beneath the surface and what the results implications mean more than anything. So let's dive into a couple of pieces of info. IndyCar is done for another year. Yes, the 2024 IndyCar series over. And now we're going to be into a very interesting off-season, I expect. There's a lot of questions about what's coming in the future. There's a new television deal that's coming for IndyCar. Formula One is back in action, and boy, oh boy, did they have a fantastic race over the weekend. That was something else. It had drama. It had incredible racing action, lap after lap, waiting to see what was going to happen, edge of your seat kind of stuff. I'm super happy that I got up early to watch it. NASCAR was racing at Watkins Glen. They had some good racing there as well in the Cup Series. Shane Van Gisbergen is not unbeatable on road courses. Chris Buescher wins the Cup race. The big story of the weekend, though, for NASCAR, for me at least, is Connor Zilisch in the Xfinity Series. Started his first Xfinity Series race. Oh, started on the pole, by the way. Oh, and he just happened to win his first race. One start, one win. Oh, and got the pole along the way, too. He's going to be a star. If he's not already your favorite driver, that's the thing with NASCAR. So many times it's like, oh, you're a NASCAR fan. Oh, who's your driver? And there's been more affiliation with manufacturer camps, and that's why some will gravitate to certain teams or drivers. But if you're looking for a driver to cheer for, if you're new to the sport and just kind of getting your feet wet and wondering who your driver might be, I give you 18-year-old Connor Zilisch, who is going to run full-time in the Xfinity Series in 2025 for Junior Motorsports. He's 18 now. He just turned 18, which makes him eligible to run in the Xfinity Series. Driving full-time next year, he has already had an unbelievable season. Competed in the Rolex 24, was a winner in his class. Competed in the 12 Hours of Sebring, was a winner in his class. I believe he has 5 ARCA Series wins this year. He's dabbled in MX5 Cup for a couple of years, winning races, battling for championships. Unlikely to do any more MX5 Cup because he's going to be so busy doing other things, but he's fun to watch. In 2 years, he'll be in Cup. Next year, probably 2 years, he may get a few Cup starts in 26, but I suspect in 2 years, he will be racing full-time in the Cup Series. He is super talented, as you'll see by watching him race against far more experienced racers. Super talented, super skilled. I've had limited interaction with him, spent a little bit of time with him a couple months ago at CTMP when he was there running an MX5 Cup, as a matter of fact. That may be his last MX5 Cup race. But just a really nice, head on his shoulders squarely, focused on the job ahead, and the kind of driver that you absolutely want to represent your team, your brand, if that's what you're looking for. But a super talented driver as well. I'm looking forward in a couple of years to Connor Zilisch and Kyle Larson racing side by side. I think that's going to be I think that's going to be something to watch. But super talented driver. Very happy for his victory. I touched on Formula One as well, and being very happy that I got up early to see that race. Piastri wins. Charles Leclerc takes the pole. Piastri comes back. These two had an epic battle for about 30 laps. It was lap after lap after lap of, is Charles Leclerc going to be able to get around Oscar Piastri again? Got close. got super close, was within a couple of tenths, but couldn't quite make the pass. This is what Formula One racing is all about. It's not just one team dominating, although we do have spells of that. It's not happening for Red Bull anymore, but this is superb machinery, incredible technology in these Formula One cars, as well as some very talented drivers pushing each other to the max, because that's what it was, lap after lap between Piastri and Leclerc. Who's going to be able to go get the victory? Is Piastri going to be able to hang on and get his second victory? Leclerc pushed him as hard as he could. In the end, the tires got away from him, and he just couldn't mount a challenge in the final couple of laps. But it was spectacular to watch. Super fun. That's what you want to see. Checo Perez looks like he might have refound his mojo as well. Look to be on his way to a great finish. Didn't quite work out. Max is a bit of a mess right now, just not quite where he was in dominating fashion. I think he's a bit flummoxed. I think the team is a bit flummoxed, but it's going to be fun to watch these final races of the Formula One season. The championship fights are on in both the drivers and the manufacturer category, because McLaren has taken over top spot in the manufacturers championship. And that means it's going to be a battle. I don't think that Max has an insurmountable lead. It's still significant. I don't think he has an insurmountable lead, and I think it's going to get very interesting as we get down to the short strokes. It's good news for Formula One in the United States, because by the time they get to Coda in November, I expect that championship battle is going to be even closer. And then in Vegas, it's going to be terrific. Here's another thing that I've sort of observed about Formula One. It's getting younger. I've always said that Formula One racing, especially, but motorsports in general, it is a young man's game at the top levels. Piastri, Lando at McLaren, two great drivers, both young, talented drivers. How about Franco Colapinto? Super impressive. George Russell with Kimi Antonelli coming next year. Ollie Berman, another talented young driver. Jack Doohan is another one who is on the way. They're not all going to succeed and be world champions time after time, but they're talented young drivers that are pushing the established big names, and there are going to be changes in the years ahead. So it's exciting to see an influx of young talent. There's still the great drivers for a number of years that we'll see. I don't know how Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari is going to go next year, but I think it's pretty cool to see what's happening in Formula One right now. It's an exciting time. IndyCar, mentioned that off the top. Will Power didn't really get a chance to fight for the title in the last race at Nashville at the Speedway because he had a seatbelt come undone. You got to stop when that happens. It's dangerous to be out on track. It's unfortunate that sort of sealed his face. It was a long shot to begin with for Will to run down Alex Palou, but with Alex starting so far back in the field, there was always the chance. But with Will's seatbelt issues, it didn't really happen. So Alex Palou, is he the new Scott Dixon? Just super consistent, wins races, wins championships. That's 3 now in his first 5 years. How many more is he going to be able to get? We're going to see. I think that's going to be very interesting to watch. It is the end of an era for television coverage of the NTT IndyCar series because NBC is stepping away. Fox comes in full time next year. They hold all the races. That's on network television. I am eager to see what's in store from Fox. I can tell you there will be changes to the broadcast presentation, and there should be. This is not slagging or ripping NBC in any way, but it's time for some upgrades, it's time for some improvements, and it's time for some steps forward. There are ways that you can improve these television shows. Technology. What do they got? 3, 4, 5 cameras maybe in car for IndyCar series races? Got to have more. And you got to have different camera angles, not all of them from the same camera. You can do better. I think there's going to be some changes. I think there's going to be some improvements to the broadcast. It's sort of evolved a little bit in the last part of this year. There's a little more information that's come out. But compare the information that's on screen in a Formula One broadcast or even a NASCAR broadcast to what's in IndyCar, there's changes that can be made to improve that show. And this is going to be a bit of Fox pushing IndyCar and getting them to adapt and getting them to change and move in another direction and getting away from that mild-mannered Midwest way that they have about doing so many things. The world seems to revolve around that. Here's an important item that I mentioned before, and this is going to be paramount next year for Fox. You're in the entertainment business. It's car racing, it's a sport, and there's competition. I get that. You are in the entertainment business. If you are not entertaining your fans, what is the reason for them to watch or show up at the track? And I'm happy so many did show up at Nashville. That was a good crowd. Again, like I said about Milwaukee a couple of weeks ago, they went back. People clamored for Milwaukee to be back on the schedule. They went back, did a doubleheader. They had a good crowd. This is the starting point that you need to build from here. Same thing with Nashville. Good crowd. They found this Band-Aid solution after the debacle of downtown. They weren't going to be able to run the race properly. Okay, we're moving it to the Oval. We're moving it 40 minutes outside of town. Thank you to those that showed up. Drivers and teams that put on a good show. This is something that needs to be built upon and improved going forward. You're going to be at the Speedway for the next couple of years. You're not going back downtown, possibly not ever, but it's certainly not happening right away. So be prepared for that. Build upon that. This is your starting point. You need to grow and improve from here. So we'll see what happens with IndyCar to that point. I love IndyCar. I want to see it grow. I want to see it succeed. I want to see it climb up from the bottom rung of the ladder, kind of where it is now. It's a shell of its former self. But it does not need to include races in far off places. You don't need to keep dragging out the story of, oh, we're going to look at some off-season races far away. They won't count in the championship, but we'll get someone to pay the big freight for us to go and travel to these places. Please, Mark Miles, stop talking about that until you actually have a signed agreement. That's a story that seems to get dragged out every couple of months whenever you need something to talk about. And how about Zach Brown's letter to IndyCar, the open letter about some things that he would like to see and changes that they would like to make. I think it's a good starting point for some open dialogue and conversation about the future and where they need to go. They need to make changes and they need to improve themselves. And there's some good ideas in that. So we'll see what happens with IndyCar. NASCAR Canada is back in action this weekend. Everyone will be converging at the Autodrome Montmagny. The place looks good from the video and the photos that I have seen. Haven't been there for many, many years, so I'm anxious to see what kind of improvements and upgrades that they have made to the facility. Good field of cars. I did the math again. It still comes out as I think Marc-Antoine Cameron has to finish 15th or better, and that will guarantee him the title, but we'll confirm that before we get into the show on the weekend. And we'll talk more about NASCAR Canada and the off season ahead and what's ahead in 2025 after this weekend. I want to have a few conversations with a few people and see where we are on a couple of stories and topics that we'll get into. There's lots of time to discuss that over the next week and weeks and months ahead. So looking forward to that, but looking forward to getting to the Autodrome Montmagny, and always a little sad when it's the last race weekend of the year. IMSA is back in action this weekend at the Brickyard as well. And anytime you're racing at Indianapolis, that's a pretty good thing. So curious to see how that event comes off as well. Also, just a little bit of news that Lego and Formula One have come up with a partnership together. So hey, IndyCar, this is the kind of thing you need to be looking at too. But Formula One and Lego have put together a partnership, and I see nothing but benefit for the two of them. That'll do it for this week's edition of Speed Chronicles. Again, if you've got thoughts, ideas, questions, suggestions, at Todd Lewis Sports, at revtv on X and on Instagram. Enjoy the great weather while we've got it. Enjoy a great weekend of racing. We'll do it again next Wednesday.